you guys might know of this channel. When I'm playing video games and stuff like that, if I'm just kind of vegging out and there's a spot in a game where it's just sort of grinding, like in Mass Effect 2 when I was just going around farming the different planets, for resources. Or if I'm playing Witcher and I'm just going around trying to, gather goods or whatever, or resources and this and that, just kind of grinding or killing enemies, trying to level up or something. Sometimes I'll play a YouTube video on in the back just to hear something going on while I'm just, playing and hanging out. And I like different YouTube videos, like, history stuff. Sometimes I watch religious videos, but I also like videos about old films and old books and things like that, things that I'm looking to discover to turn around and give you guys reviews of. And there's this one channel, which I caught on to is really interesting. Good Bad Flicks is the name of the channel. I'm sure some of you guys know it. And he does different periods or movements in film over the last decades or whatever, or television too, that are kind of seen as sort of B-level content, but he looks for like gems within it, or good writing within these bad films. So Good Bad Flicks is the name of the channel, and he's got some interesting things, and he covers everything. He did a great video on herxploitation, shows that were trying to be like the Hercules 90s show and stuff, and you develop or it'll remind me of things that I forgot about that show or that movie. I never really caught that back in the day. Sometimes though, and I'll just set his videos to play, like, autoplay while I'm, playing a game or something. Sometimes he'll go and do videos on, like some of the late night Showtime or Skinemax, movies, which is fascinating. It's fascinating because he's saying that, this is a genre in which you've got the companies and the studios are saying, yeah, whatever, make sure you got this many sex scenes of this many minutes long in each episode or each movie or whatever. But then you've got some storytellers within that field who are actually trying to tell somewhat of a decent story, even within this softcore porn, genre that it is. I'm always fascinated by that kind of situation, because I did a lot of study of pulp fiction back in the day in my own schooling and whatnot. And I thought that was so fascinating in the 20s and 30s, where, especially during the Depression and whatnot, you had a lot of artists and writers who just couldn't get work. And these were very skilled painters and writers. And some of the jobs they could get were like in the pulps, writing for the little pulp magazines, and it, paid little of whatever. They were trying to make money. So they were having to meet certain conventions of pulp fiction, especially some of the racier, saucier magazines and whatnot. And yet here they are still trying to create something of substance because it's who they are as artists or writers or whatever. So I'm always fascinated by that kind of setup and some of the work that can be done in it. So videos are playing, and then in one of these videos he starts talking about this show, which was apparently it's not too far back in his video log. You can go look at Good Bad Flicks, and it's not too far back. It's called Forbidden Science. Apparently, I think it was a Skinemax show back in the day, towards the end of that, because like once internet porn became a thing, apparently Skinemax and all those late night softcore shows just kind of, dissipated on the cable channels. So it was like in the last phase of that. But he started talking about it, and he said that it was written, kind of created by this guy named Doug Brode. And the more I heard about this guy, Doug Brode, and the ideas he had, and, just from watching this YouTube video, I was like, man, that sounds really cool. I love his style. And then he went on to do some different things, apparently. Now, he did this show. Apparently it lasted one season, called Forbidden Science. Today, the ideas might seem, maybe they're kind of overdone at this point or whatever, but back then it was the first time people were talking about, cloning and synthetic beings, not the first time they were talking about it, but that first wave of it within the new, century and whatnot. And he had this whole story about it, and it sounded really interesting. And apparently even the Doug Brode himself and the producers and whatnot, even they were kind of frustrated somewhat at having to let the writing and having to let the story kind of crunch under this, the studios or the network's demand for, you got to have you got to have so many sex scenes, and they got to be of this length in every episode. And it was to the point where it's like, at some point, it's like, all right, so these two characters come in, say, hi, honey, I'm home. And then they're going to have sex for 10 minutes, and then we can get on with the plot, And I thought that was just funny. Apparently one of the producers actually made an edit that it's not released. I wish it'd be released, because then I could finally watch the show, because I'm not interested in watching porn, softcore, whatever. I just don't care. I'm not going to do that. But the idea of the story sounded so good, and apparently one of the producers actually cut an edit of the show just so they could have it for their own, satisfaction of knowing, hey, we at least created some good storytelling here, where they cut down the sex to only where it was, a logical thing for these two characters or whatever. It was all the gratuitous stuff was kind of cut down, and I wish that was released some way somehow ever. But anyway, the story sounded awesome, so I went and looked up online the synopsises of each episode. And I'm still not getting the full story, but it gave me enough to know that's a really cool idea. And Doug Brode, the writer behind it, he was a big X-Files fan. So I started looking up some of his stuff, and he eventually moved over to just writing novels. Because, rightly so, I imagine this is really frustrating if you're a writer and you write all these cool screenplays and you sell them to different companies, networks or production companies who option it for a film. Well, just because a company buys your screenplay doesn't mean that they're going to make a movie of it. They just have the right to make a movie of it. You've been paid. You sit down, shut up. You don't get to have anything to do with the story anymore. We have the right to make a movie of this if we want. More often than not, it's going to get buried in a slush pile somewhere, and your work is just never seen by anybody, So he said instead of doing that, he wanted to just write novels, because at least he could publish the novels, get them out there, and have readers and see his content. He's done a series of, I don't know anything about these novels. Alien Invasion, I think it is. Alien Stories of Some Which Way. Let me look up his website and show you. These are the books. Alien Sky. I think Alien Sky Publishing. Maybe that's his name of his publishing company. The Ship's Revenge, Children of the Ship. So he's, got these sort of X-Files like novels. I haven't read those. The one that I am going to talk to you about, though, today is Shelli. This is freaking awesome. And this is the novel that I want to recommend to you. Really good stuff here. I bought it from his website, which you can find. Just on the spot here, I can't find it right there. But you can buy it from his website, and it's signed. I was so because as I ordered it, the synopsis sounded really cool. It's about this sort of a cyberpunk future in which synthetics, androids, are operating. Of course, they're sex bots, they're house cleaning bots, they're all kind of, synthetics for all sort of different roles. And Shelli is a synthetic who is working with the Department of Homeland Security to hunt down crimes when synthetics go rogue, when a synthetic kills a person or something like that. All right, so that sounded like a great premise. I knew I liked his style, from reading the synopsis of the episodes of Forbidden Science, so I wanted to give it a chance. So I ordered it, the hard copy, online, but then I just started listening to it on Audible, because it's on Audible as well. It's really great on Audible. There's a great reading of it and everything, and it was so cool. And then I got the cover, and it's signed. He's, what do you say? Thank you for your good support. This is one of my favorites. I hope you love Shelli as much as I do. The envelope it came in, it's like his, handwriting there in the return address and everything. So I thought it was great. And it's a solid story. It's, it's not breaking ground that's never been considered before. It's not, ideas that has never been, covered before in these kinds of stories with synthetics or cyberpunk tales of the future. But it's a solid story with characters that you enjoy hanging out with. It's a real challenging story. You don't know how it's going to end because, as you know, with cyberpunk, it can get neo-noir at some time. You don't know who's going to survive, who's not. This is all kind of stuff. And I think the biggest thing I can say about this work, and I look forward to reading his Ship series because I hope that it translates into those works as well. You can tell this is written by somebody who loves what he's writing. He loves the art of storytelling. He loves writing stories. He's not doing it because he needs to meet a deadline. He's got to get this book out for that franchise so he can move on to the next franchise book so he can pay his bills. This is somebody who wrote because he loves writing. This is somebody who writes this cyberpunk, synthetic, futuristic kind of story because he likes that content. That just shines through on every page. It really does. There were no real pacing issues in the story. He does one thing occasionally in this book, which normally I don't like. I think it's normally overdone. It's a way to kind of pad out books, but it actually makes sense in the story he had here, in which, you see something happen and then you're in this one character's perspective for this one chapter, and this thing happens, or maybe this person dies there, and you're like, oh my gosh. And then the next chapter is, now let me tell you what was happening there from a different character's perspective. Usually I hate that because it's a way for, franchise writers just to kind of pad out their books. It made sense for him to do it here, though, because there are so many strings that are being pulled behind the scenes. You know that because of this world that he set up, that, you know, this character explodes and you're like, all right, what really was going on with that? You know, so you're actually looking forward to getting the happenings of it from another perspective. So I don't, the only critical thing I can say about this book, and I'm not holding it up as, you know, the greatest piece of American literature ever written. I'm just saying it's a really fun book, and I recommend it to people who like this kind of genre. It's just, you're going to love it. It's great. It's well told. It's well written. It's a good, solid story. The only critical thing I can say about it is that, let's see, it was written, when was it written? What year did you put this out? It's a little old at this point, I think. No, it was just published in 2024. Is it that new? I thought from the Good Bad Flicks channel, when it mentioned some of these books he was writing, that this one was a little older. Maybe this is a new edition written in 2024. I don't know. Anyway, it's set up perfectly for a sequel at the end, and I haven't heard any rumblings of a sequel. So he says Shelley's his favorite. You need to write another book then, because this was great. I would read another book in the series in a heartbeat. And the ending's it's a good conclusion to the arc. It's a good, solid story arc. You're not left wondering anything, but it just sets things up the way this conflict ended and everything, and the resolutions and everything. It sets up a whole new dynamic that would be really cool to go follow a story with that in. So I hope this ends up being like a trilogy or something, like apparently the ship stories are. But I'll check out those next and see if those meet the same kind of level of just fun reading. They're really great. So I recommend that. Shelli by Doug Brode. I will get the link and everything and have it in this video when I cut it out as its own just, you know, review video. So wanted to put that out there. Don't forget, you can still check out my short reads on Amazon. And you don't have to have an Amazon Kindle to read these. Whether you have a Droid, an iPhone, or just a computer, there's a Kindle app, a Kindle Reader app, which is free. You just get that from your app store, whichever one you have, and you can read. And you really should. I recommend getting it anyway, not just for my books, but for you can get a lot of great free reads sometimes on Kindle, or free comics even sometimes. And even if you're like me and you prefer to have a good physical media in your hands, sometimes things aren't released in any other way. So like my little short reads right now, my short stories in the Objects of Desire series are just released right now on Amazon as e-reads, short reads, e-reads. And eventually, a year or so down the road, I might put them all together as a hard copy for somebody to buy. But for right now, you can check them out. Like I said, you don't have to have a Kindle, but the link is in the description. I think I put the link there to get to my author page on Amazon. The first short read installment of my Heroic Inspirations, I took that book that was published before, but the publisher went out of business, so I've revamped it, revised it and whatnot, and I'm putting out the first edition of that at the end of this month. So that's going to be available there as well. And then, you know, after a couple of years, when I put out all the different, you know, blurbs of that and all the different sections of it, I might re-release that as a hard copy, but you can get it now from Amazon. So just reminding you of that. Link is in the description.